Hey everybody, this is Terell Stafford, Artistic Director of Jazz for the Philly Pops, and I'm here today to talk about Shirley Scott. The word I would use to describe Shirley Scott as a musician is joyful. Every note she played, she smiled. She giggled the whole time she was playing. I found nothing but joy when I would play with Shirley Scott. I remember the first time I played with her, Tim Warfield said, "Hey man, I have this gig at Ortlieb's. Do you want to come?" And I'm like, "Sure, I'll come." And he goes, "The gig is with Shirley Scott and Mickey Roker and Arthur Harper." I'm like, "Wow, how'd you get that gig?" He goes, "Well, Bootsy Barnes couldn't make it." And I said, "Yeah, I would love to come. One condition, I don't want to play." He goes, "Oh, don't worry about that, man. Don't worry about that." So we get to Ortlieb's and we go, and Shirley Scott is on the stage, and Tim starts to play with her, and it was unbelievable. People are screaming, she's giggling, everybody's laughing. And then he whispers something in her ear, and she says, "Ladies and gentlemen, there's a young trumpet player out there. I'd like to invite him on stage." And I was like, "No, no, Tim." So, as a musician, it's just joyful. She just appreciated every person that stood on stage. She appreciated every note that was played. And and if she played something she didn't like, she wouldn't grimace. She would just giggle about it. It would be like, "Ah," and keep going. It was always fun. It was always joyful to play with Shirley Scott. The word I would use to describe Shirley Scott as an educator would be passion. I called her Aunt Shirley. I couldn't call her, I couldn't call her Shirley or Shirley Scott. I just called her Aunt Shirley. And it's because, she would be the person you could sit down and say, "I don't understand this. I don't see why this works." And she would explain it to you. I remember we would have many car rides together, and she only lived maybe 10 minutes from me at the time, and we'd go for walks down paths and just talk about life and everything. But there was one particular moment we were talking about music, and she goes, "Baby, can I tell you something?" I said, "Sure." She goes, "I love playing with you, and I love your articulation. But, that's something I think you could probably work on." I said, "Sure." I said, "In what way, Shirley?" She says, "Well, your articulation represents who you are. When we listen to a jazz musician, yeah, you can tell a jazz musician who they are by their sound, but you can really tell who they are by their articulation. And that's something that I think you should think about and work on, because I think if you define your articulation and let your articulation represent you as a musician, people would be able to recognize you. You'd find your own voice." So I said, well, how could you describe my articulation now? She goes, "Mushy, like mashed potatoes." I said, "Okay, well, what should it be?" She goes, "It should be fire." She goes, "Have you heard Lee Morgan?" I said, "Yeah." She goes, "Well, go back and listen to him and really think about his articulation." And so I did, and I listened to Lee Morgan. I heard the pump, the pop, and this power, this burst of power when Lee Morgan played. And so I started to go in a practice room and just work on a pop at the beginning of my articulation and work on the air and the power that Lee Morgan had. And so the next gig we did, I came to the gig and I started to play that way, and she just started to giggle. She goes, "That's it, baby. That's it, baby. That's it." So she was passionate. My last memory of Shirley Scott was at my house, and I told her, I said, "Shirley, I've been doing some cooking, and I want to cook for you." And she goes, "Baby, you can cook?" I said, "I can cook." And I'll never just forget when she came in, she met my family. She'd met them before, of course, but it was just like a family reunion when she came in, and Mickey Roker was laughing and cracking jokes, and it was a time that was just so communal and so full of joy. And she loved my cooking, and that meant the world to me. I mean, to this day, that meant the world. She brought it up all the time. She goes, "Boy, them collard greens, ooh, that barbecue chicken." And so the fact that she allowed me to cook, and that she would even just come to my house, being the person she was, and share an afternoon of hanging out, meant the world to me, and I'll never forget it. One lesson that she taught me that I use today is being able to create in the spur of the moment. There's a story behind that. The very last recording that Shirley Scott did was with myself and Tim Warfield. And, we go to college and the whole time I was in college, or even my students when they're in school, you rehearse week after week, and you rehearse and you rehearse, and you get the music down, and you feel fairly comfortable on the music, and then you present it. And that's great, but that's not always life. So Shirley Scott told Tim Warfield and I on a Monday that she wanted us to be on her next record. So we were like, what? So we're all excited to be on Shirley Scott's record. So Tuesday comes about, and so I called Shirley. I said, hey, Shirley, do you still want us to be on your record? She goes, yeah. I said, when is that going to happen? She goes, I'll let you know tomorrow. So now it's Wednesday. So call Shirley. I said, Shirley, when is this record going to happen? She goes, baby, it's going to happen Friday. I said, Friday of next week? And she goes, no, Friday, this Friday. And I said, okay, well, do you have any music? And she goes, I'll get back to you on that. I'll give you a call tomorrow. So now this is Thursday. So she calls us and she goes, okay, I have the music together. I want you and Tim to meet me at my studio and we'll go over it. So we're great. So we go to the studio and we get there and she goes, do you guys have a tape player? And we're like, yeah. She goes, okay, well, I'm going to play the music and I want you just to record it. And then after I record it, I want you to take the music home. I want you to learn it. I want you to come up with harmony parts. I want you to come up with backgrounds. I want you to do everything. And we said, okay, so we finished this. He and I stayed up all night. We worked on learning the music. We worked on coming up with horn parts, background parts. We showed up to the studio the next morning at 9 a.m. with no sleep, and we recorded all day. One quote or anecdote that I will always have in my memory of Shirley Scott is to play what you know. Play what you know. So she would lead a jam session at Ortlieb's on Tuesdays. And many people would jump up on the stage and would play songs they didn't know. And when they would do that, everyone would suffer. So she would say to them, here's what I want you to do. Instead of jumping up on the stage playing something you don't know, write down what it is so that you can go home and learn it. And then you come back the next week and play it after you learn it. That shows respect. That shows etiquette. And that was another thing she taught. She taught etiquette at the jam session. If someone got up on stage and played too long, she would say something to them after the tune, like, don't play so long. You only need 2 choruses. You don't need 20. Nobody wants to hear that. I've been on this earth for 60 years, and I don't play more than 2 or 3 choruses, so you don't either. So now I'd like to play a composition written by Shirley Scott. This is entitled Blues Everywhere, and this was her mantra. Everything had the blues.